So this is day 2 of a little sequence video series I have on writing a nonfiction book in a week. And yesterday, all I really managed to do was make a little outline. I'm in Bali. We've had kind of a weird, stressful week trying to get organized, but we got internet finally set up. Right now, things are kind of going okay, so I'm going to keep working on this project. I don't know for sure that I'll get the whole book finished in a week, but this task wasn't that difficult. It took me a couple of hours just to organize my research. If you're starting from scratch, this process is going to take a lot longer. But the main thing with research, and I'll tell you a little story. When I started doing my master's program, I hadn't really learned yet. I was always into creative writing, so I was really good at writing essays, and I hadn't really learned to do research. In my master's degree, one of the first classes I took, the professor wanted me to have a literary review or a literature review. Basically, the way you write academic papers is first you sum up the summary and you say, here's what everybody else has said before. Other people have commented on this stuff, but they missed this crucial issue. Like, this is the gap in the research that this article will provide. So before you even start writing the thing, you prove that there's a need for the thing that you're writing. That's kind of what the research is for. So you don't want to skip it. And also, it kind of just shows that you've done a little bit of reading. It also makes it sure that you're not just putting out, like, there are hundreds of books about some person's opinion and they've all read the same like source material, so they're all kind of the same. None of them are really unique or different. For a good, strong nonfiction book, you need to have a really unique claim that fits in. It's a unique selling proposition. You're offering something different than what's already out there on the market, and you don't know whether or not your book does that unless you've researched the market. So the first thing you need to do is look at the books on Amazon and read them, basically. So on this particular book about creative confidence, I looked on Amazon. I've read most of the books on Amazon about creativity and creative production and creative genius or whatever. There are a few specific books about creativity and confidence. None of them are great, but I had to at least read them to know that I'm providing something different. And what I can do is, quote from their book. Even if I just skim through them on Amazon, even if I just read like the look inside part and I just read through the introduction and I pull one quote, it just shows that I've read something, I've done my research, I know what else is out there, and I know that my book is different and better and unique and it has something to offer. So you just want to make sure that you're satisfying the market by looking at the market. You don't want to be just assuming that your book is awesome and different when maybe there's a book out there that says the exact same thing. So because I've already done my research, I know that, and this is something I've been thinking about for a long time. I've had this theme in mind for a long time because I know it's a really important theme. I know a lot of people struggle with, having the motivation and the creativity, the confidence to create. And it's a theme I've been reading all these other books on creativity, and I see this same theme keeps coming up again and again. And so I mentioned earlier in the last video that the main idea of this particular book is that there's only two things that all creative insecurity is based around. It's you being worried about the quality of what you're producing, or which is like, is it good enough, or the value, which is anybody else going to pay for it? That's the core argument of this entire book. That's new and different, and I'm excited about that. There's also one really powerful metaphor for the whole thing that I'm going to be reinforcing. And specifically, I've done a lot of research. I have a lot of quotes. I basically went through some of the books that I've read, and I pulled a bunch of quotes down here in the quote section, and I just dumped them all in here. So last video, this document was around 8,000 words. Now it's 18,000 words. So this is really, really rough, and I still need to clean all this crap up. And then I need to go back and put it into my outline in the right place. So that's going to be a whole different thing, but we'll tackle that tomorrow when we do the organization. Specifically with this book, and your book's always going to be completely different. You don't want to base your research too much on just one other person's book. You want to make sure when you're doing your research, basically, there's some stuff. If you research the copyright laws and creative use or creative commons, basically you want to be careful about not quoting too much from any one source. If you quote a little bit from a lot of different sources, it's okay. If you quote too much, and by too much I mean like one whole paragraph might be okay, like half a page might be okay, although that's really a lot. But you can definitely get away with a couple of sentences as long as it's not, as long as you provide attribution, you say where you got the quote from, and as long as it's less than 10% of your entire product, although really you should be aiming at like 1%. You don't want to rely too heavily on any one book. Except in this particular case, I'm really heavily leaning on a few things. So I'm going to talk about those just because I think they're really interesting in this video. So the first one's actually my own book that I put out earlier. This was really my PhD thesis that I published just because I had it. I had the file, I had all the stuff. It's mostly about Paradise Lost. You can see I don't really have any good reviews. A lot of people aren't going to be happy with some of the things I say, but mostly it's like a literary history of the concept of evil and the concept of the devil. You might be surprised by how much famous authors and famous works of literature were directly inspired by Paradise Lost, by the idea of the devil and God and evil and all this stuff. There's so much really fascinating content. So I was thrilled to write this book. It's not a popular book. It's very academic, so nobody really is reading it, which is fine, but there's still a lot of really good information in it. So a few of the things in this book that I really think are valuable, and I made it large just so you can see it, is this concept of striving versus drifting. So there are basically two responses to life in general. There is just going with the flow, and there's seeking to change something new, trying to create something, basically. And for a lot of the history of mankind, the creative impulse, the impulse to make something new, to change what is and to make something different, was considered evil or sinful or unnatural. And only in the last couple of centuries, it became a cultural value. And there was this huge moral paradigm shift, which is what my PhD thesis was all about. But there are a few pivotal texts. One of them is The Consolations of Philosophy. It's a 4th century book by a philosopher named Boethus. And it's not very well known, but it used to be very well known. So a lot of the great works of literature, a lot of the great famous authors, they had read that book. So there's a whole river of literary influence that's based off of this little known book. So, and it starts with this concept of drifting. It's a really important concept that nobody else really talks about because nobody has read all these old books. But this thread of drifting is picked up again in Napoleon Hill's book. He actually has a book about conversations with the devil that wasn't published until I think in the last 6 years or so, because it wasn't published till after his death because it was too controversial. And he's really famous, of course, for Think and Grow Rich, but that positive thinking mindset stuff, it used to be evil. Like when you look at Manfred, if you look at Faust, that whole, self-determination, willpower, I'm going to create what I want, ambition, success. Hubris is what the devil, Satan in Paradise Lost, that was his pivotal sin. That's the reason he fell, was because of his pride, because of his ambition. So it used to be evil, and then it shifted, and now it's the highest good. Now you have all this new age self-help stuff, and Anthony Robbins, it's, ambition is what it means to be human. So I think that's really fascinating. But the idea with this book is that if you want to have a meaningful life, you have to get away from drifting, and you have to actually start to take control and take empowered choices. But when you do that, of course, you're going to open yourself up to risk because you're always stepping off the ledge into uncertainty. That's what the creative process is all about. So the fear that you feel when you step off the edge, when you're going off to create something new, that's not something you can avoid because that's a necessary and natural part of the process. So there are other ways to deal with that fear and to understand that fear rather than to just try to get past it or to mute it or avoid it or anything like that. Anyway, so this is going to be this book. One of the main things I'm quoting from is this PhD thesis that I wrote. It's actually 120,000 words, so of course I can't use it all. It's really, I think, fascinating stuff. But like I said, it's way too It's really deep philosophy. I mean, I struggled with this for like years and years to even figure it all out. So I can't just dump quotes from my PhD thesis. I have to simplify and revise. And I want this guide to creative confidence to be simple and easy. So I don't want to like overwhelm people with, like, there's a reason my PhD thesis doesn't sell. It's too difficult. So anyway, that's one text. I'm going to write them down here. These were my main influences. PhD thesis, 120,000 K. The other one that I just finished this year, it's actually something I read during my PhD thesis, but I never really had time to finish it. This was a book called The Solitudes of Nature and Man, or The Genius of Solitude. It was written about 150 years ago. It's a really fascinating book. It quotes from all of these other famous people. It's about the whole topic of solitude, but also there's some really good stuff about creative happiness. And this is another book that like I put up on Amazon just because I have done it. I needed to edit it and revise it because I couldn't find a clean copy anywhere. I made a nice cover. I republished it. I had a new introduction and a lot of organization stuff, but it's public domain, even though it's not easy to find. I really had to dig and I had to get it scanned. And like I said, edited and cleaned. It took a long time, about a year of effort just to edit it because it's really, really dense writing. Which again is why, like, even with a nice cover, it doesn't sell. I've only got one review. I think it's brilliant, but it's just too dense for most people. However, there's some really, really good stuff in there. So one of the things that I have done is I made a blog post about it, and it's basically like a summary. So even though I think the book is genius, it's not really clear on the central thesis. So I actually went back through and I figured out like what the main claim of the whole book was, and I figured out that it was mostly about happiness. And so when I'm writing this book about creative confidence, it really is about how not to be unhappy when you're trying to create something, how to avoid that paralyzing fear and anxiety that's normal and a necessary part of the creative process. So there's a lot of stuff in here. This is actually a really long blog post, but I can use a lot of these quotes and a lot of this content. This is a blog post, like it's on my website, but nobody's really reading this, and it's actually really good content. So I'll probably take like most of this blog post and try to put it into the actual book. So that's number 2 is my treatise on solitude. That's another like, I don't know, 120,000 words probably. It's actually 140,000 words, I just checked. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not actually gonna use all this stuff. There's a reason these books don't sell. I just wanna pull out the most valuable, most awesome pieces of research, because this is stuff that like nobody else has heard about. So not only does it make my book much more well-rounded because it shows I've done my research, but also this is new, relevant material that I think people are really going to enjoy. The thing is, even though it's really valuable, I can't just offer them everything. It's basically just too much. People want a short, easy guide. They want to be taught this stuff. They don't want to like dig through the mud to find all of these jewels, if that's an apt metaphor. So there's one other project. It was my little manifesto that I put up a few years ago. This was when I was trying to write a manifesto for my blog. I called it, "You are fucking awesome, do something that matters." I actually made a lot of mistakes with most of my nonfiction books. So even though it has some reviews, even though it looks like it's not doing terribly, like I could be advertising this book and it'd probably be doing better. The main problems are with the title, because a lot of people don't like swearing, or they don't know how to search for it, or they can't find it easily. It's just not really a brandable title. It doesn't really hit on any pain points. Like the other book about creative confidence really hits a pain point. It's really obvious what the thing is. There's some good stuff in this book. So what I'm probably going to do, this is only 40 pages, it's about 10,000 words. I'll probably unpublish this book completely and just rework some of this stuff into the new book on creative confidence that I'm working on, which is basically do something that matters, which is the main thesis of this entire book, because I say that the problem with what you're making is quality and value. If you can fix your quality and value problems, you won't have any fear or insecurity, because you will know that you're good enough, and you will know that somebody else wants to buy your work because you've done the research. So that's kind of the main thing. So this manifesto that I wrote, there's actually a lot of really good stuff in there. It's just not enough. It doesn't have a strong enough of a thesis. The title is messed up, so it's not attracting the right people. And even though I've offered it as an opt-in on my website, I think a lot of people just don't really find it. I don't really push it. And so I could be using all that same material. I'll probably try to use a lot of that same source material because it's good, but I'll use it in the context of a much stronger title and subtitle, a much stronger thesis and main claim and argument, and then I'll back it up with a lot more research to make it meaningful. And also, I think when I wrote this, I didn't put enough story. I talked in the last video about how you need to put story to create an emotional response in your readers. Not only pictures that you put in their head, but also personal vulnerability shares so that they feel sympathy. There's a way you can write a nonfiction book well, and people will like it more. It will matter more to them. They'll appreciate it more. So it's good material. It's just not being used effectively. Same with all these three things. It's probably like 300,000 words of good material that nobody's reading and is not being useful or utilized because I haven't packaged it well. So the main claim, not the main claim, but one of the main things about this part with quality and value, the fear, the insecurity people have when they're creating things is because they don't know if it's good enough and they don't know if anybody's going to pay for it. So if you solve these two things, it's actually really about the marketing and the sales, because people are worried, like, what am I spending all this time on this thing that nobody's going to buy? Am I wasting my time? Does this have any value? So a lot of the fear and the insecurity about creating the thing is actually fear about the marketing or the market or the selling or the uncomfortableness. So I have this little quote in here: value is how much you can get people to care. And if it resonates with them, if you're making work that matters, if you're creating work that matters on purpose and not as like after you finish the work, then you do the marketing, that's why people are insecure about it, because that doesn't work, because of course they've probably made a product that nobody wants. And that's why almost everybody fails. That's why almost all authors and artists are not making any money, because their process of creative production is backwards. And there's a lot of really good books by Jeff Goins or Ryan Holiday or Seth Godin recently. This is not just me talking. This is the new method of creative production, of marketing. This is pretty common knowledge with a bunch of best-selling books right now as of like 2019. This like 2016, 2018, there's a whole new paradigm shift in regards to marketing. So I'm not just like making this shit up or pulling shit out of my ass. This is already common knowledge in marketing circles. It's just not quite common knowledge in artistic or creativity circles yet. And even if it is, even if the knowledge is out there, even if the information is out there, it's not being communicated in a way that's going to help authors and artists with their core confidence issues. So that's why there's a demand for this book, or that's why I can position this book as something new and different. So this is all my source material for this particular project. This, as you can see, this is stuff that I've been working on for like a decade. I've been working on these things for years and years. So this is not new stuff for me, but it is new that I'm going to try to use my knowledge and put it together in a new, better package that's going to help more people. There's actually this great quote from Seth Godin in his new book, This is Marketing. It's really messy because I typed it up and I haven't edited it yet, but I'm going to read it quickly because it's valuable here. The first step is to hold on. I screwed this up. I think it's the first step is to invent a thing worth making with a story worth telling and a contribution worth talking about. So making the right kind of thing. The second step is to design and build it in a way that a few people will particularly benefit from and care about. And the third step is to tell a story that matches the built-in narrative and dreams of that tiny group of people. So the fourth step is just spread the word, and the fifth step is to show up consistently, regularly, generously for years and years. So this stuff is what people, like number 4 is the only thing that people actually think about when it comes to marketing. They think they can just spread the word, and that's not true. The first 3 steps are all about packaging and positioning and just making the right kind of thing. So that's what I'm doing here. I should have mentioned a little bit earlier in my timeline, because this is about the research. You need to do your market research. So I've already done my market research. I've already I've done my keyword research. I've figured out which keywords people are searching for the most. I actually included this a long time ago it's probably for like the last year in my email autoresponders. This is the research I did, what people are searching for. So I know that these are some problems, and I know how I can try to arrange these problems into a subtitle that hits a lot of the keywords. That's really important when you're positioning your book. You have to know what people are looking for, what their problems are, so you can position your book in the way that's going to resonate with them the most. So that's also part of the research process, is figuring out your market and figuring out your positioning and how to tell the story in the right way that's going to appeal to the right people. So that's kind of one. I probably should clarify market research. And then once you've done that, you want to do competition research, where you would like go on Amazon and Google all those keywords and see what things show up, like what blogs or what websites or what books show up for those keywords, and then quote those people. If you find, some guy saying something smart, quote them and put them in the book. You don't want to have too much research. You don't have like inundations of quotes, but it does make your book more valuable if you've provided third-party material, and it's not just you talking about yourself or you talking about your life. Anyway, so that's it for this video. I'm going to cross this off. Tomorrow I'm going to do the organization, which is basically just taking all of this stuff and trying to force it together into my outline, just basically copying, pasting, moving all the stuff around. It's really difficult. Once you have a strong outline, hopefully this outline that I made yesterday will kind of serve. We'll find out tomorrow if it actually does. But just taking all the information and putting it into the right place, what comes first, what comes next, that's going to take a while. I don't know that I'll be able to do it in one day, but that's what I'm going to try to attempt tomorrow, and then I'll make a video about that tomorrow, and we'll see how that goes. Thanks, bye-bye.